Who did it?
No idea. See what you can find out, would you, Doc?
Is that his wife?
Yes.
Well, in that case, you better take her to another room.
Let's go to the other room for a while, shall we? You'll be more comfortable there and then we can talk easy there too.
I don't want to. I want to stay here. Please let me stay. I'll be all right.
You've got something cooking in the kitchen here, ma'am.
Yes. Yes. That was his supper.
But I thought you had no supper in the house. Isn't that why you wanted to go out?
Well, yes. But I had to get some vegetables. I had plenty of meat. I always keep plenty of meat in the freezer.
Well?
Seems like a severely fractured base to me. Just one blow right on the back of the head.
Can you make any guess?
Well, up to a point, yes, I can. See, it's bound to be something heavy, that's obvious, but it isn't sharp. At least I don't think there are any sharp edges on it.
Now, why do you say that?
Look for yourself. You see the skin on the scalp? It's not even broken. And it's not a hammer, for instance. It's more like a large club of some sort.
A club?
Yes, something shaped like a club anyway. Smooth and rounded at the end. That's my guess.
See you later, Doc. Let me know as soon as you're through with the lab.
I'll do that.
Mrs. Maloney, you said you didn't notice anything particularly unusual about your husband's behavior when he came in this evening.
No, not especially. Just seemed terribly tired.
I see. He had a drink.
Yes. He always had a drink when he came home from work.
He usually took soda, didn't he?
Yes, I think so.
And ice, of course. This evening, he took it straight.
Yes. I suppose he did.
Now think hard, Mrs. Maloney, please. He comes into the door. So what's the first thing he does after that?
He kissed me.
Now wait, and please excuse me for asking these questions, but I'm simply trying to find out whether or not there was something in your husband's mind when he came home. You're quite sure he kissed you. It wasn't that you kissed him.
He kissed me.
Okay, then he walks straight over there and makes himself a shot of neat whiskey. Am I right?
Well,
He doesn't usually take a drink before he takes his coat off, does he?
no, I guess not.
You saw all this and you still didn't think that he was a worried man?
Well, I told you. I just thought that he was very tired.
You know what I think, Mrs. Maloney? I think he was desperately worried. And if we can only find out why that was, then we'll be able to get somewhere.
Well, I wish I could help you some more.
The other thing I got to find is that weapon. Hey, Mike! Now look, I want you to go outside right away and comb every inch of the garden. Have those fellows out there to help you. See what you can find. Use some flashlights. I'll check the rest of the house.
Right, Chief, on it.
Mrs. Maloney, when somehow I don't believe this was a premeditated murder, nor was it a professional job. I think it was a quarrel and then someone lost their temper. And then, well, perhaps this person, whoever he was, simply grabbed hold of an object that happened to be closer to him and swung it on your husband. The point is this. If I am right, then the weapon that he used is something that's already in this house. Now then, here's how you might be able to help us out. First of all, Can you tell me if there's something that's missing from this room that could have been used as a weapon? Take your time.
Well, I'm not sure. What sort of thing do you mean?
Something like a club, for instance.
A club? You mean something like a baseball bat?
Yes, exactly.
No, there isn't a baseball bat in the house.
Okay. How about a door stopper or a heavy metal vase or anything like... You know what I mean, don't you?
Yes, I think so. But it's so hard to remember everything that's there in the house.
Any luck, Mike?
No, we've searched all the rooms and the garage. Nothing yet. Mrs. Maloney, it's 10:15. Mrs. Maloney,
Yes?
are you quite sure you won't want someone to take you to Mrs. Vandernoy's house tonight?
Oh no, thank you. I couldn't go anywhere at the moment.
Well, would you like to go to bed and lie down then? This could take all night, you see.
That's all right. I may do that.
Something fishy about this case.
Go on.
I don't believe there ever was a fight in this room. I think someone purposely fixed it afterwards to make it look as if they did one.
Why do you say that?
I'll tell you why. It isn't humanly possible to club a man in the back of his head right here in the middle of a fight.
Not unless there were two people.
That's right, but I don't think there were two people.
Or unless he got knocked down during the fight and the other person hit him while he was on the floor.
No one knocked him out first. There isn't a single bruise or mark on his entire body, only where he'd been hit. And another thing, he was carrying a gun, wasn't he?
Sure he was.
Then why didn't he draw it? You know why? Because he didn't even realize he was being threatened.
In that case, the killer was probably someone who knew him pretty well.
Exactly.
You think it could have been the woman?
Why do you say that?
Well, I know our friend used to fool around a bit now and again.
I see what you mean. Well, we got to find that weapon. Did anybody think to turn off that oven?
Oh, whatever it is must be burnt by now.
Hey, that looks all right.
Yes, it does.
That's mighty peculiar, isn't it? I thought it would have been burned to crisp by now.
So did I.
Or it takes longer considering how big it is.
Well, it is a big one, all right.
Yeah, you're darn right it's big.
Is that spoiled?
It's all right, it's not spoiled.
Well, I just came to ask you if you would want to have a cup of coffee. You must be terribly tired, both of you. I'm sorry I couldn't think of it sooner.
Well, that's not necessary, ma'am. You mustn't bother about us.
We'll be all right.
Well, Patrick won't forgive me if I didn't look after you properly. He always told me how grateful he was when in the old days someone would offer him a cup of coffee and he couldn't come home for a meal. He said that's the least you could do when someone's trying to help you out.
Well, that's certainly good of you.
It sure is.
I tell you what, why don't you have some of this too?
We couldn't do that, Mrs. Maloney.
Couldn't dream of it.
We'll be sending out for a couple of sandwiches in a while.
Oh no, have this instead. But I'll have to throw this out if you don't.
Well, what about you, ma'am?
Me? Oh no, I couldn't touch a thing. No. Give some to the others too. Particularly those two out in the cold. They must have all been famished by now. Ask them both. Why don't you? And give them a nice hot meal. It's very good meat. I promise you that.
Why? Great.
Best piece of meat I've had in my meal.
She said we could finish it, didn't she?
She did. I've even given some to the fellows outside. They've been searching in nooks and corners for hours now.
I'd love to have some round crispy stuff on the end over here. I suppose it'd be all right to take this bone home for my dog.
Sure. She said she didn't want to see it again.
You missed a real good meal.
Any dope on the cases yet, Chief?
Not at all. No one's found the weapon. Doc says it's some sort of a club.
You mean a shillelagh or something?
I don't know. Something heavy anyway. Whoever did it aren't going to carry a thing like that around longer than they need it.
You know, personally, I think it's right here on the premises.
Well, for all you know, it might be right under our very noses.
There will now be a step change break of 5 minutes. Presenting William Somerset Maugham's Mr. Noir.
I was prepared to dislike Max Gelada even before I knew him. The war had just finished, and the passenger traffic in the ocean-going liners was heavy. Accommodation was very hard to get, and you had to put up with whatever the agents chose to offer you. You could not hope for a cabin to yourself, and I was thankful to be given one in which there were only 2 berths. But when I was told the name of my companion, my heart sank. It suggested closed portholes and the night air rigidly excluded. It was bad enough to share a cabin for 14 days with anyone. You see, I was traveling from San Francisco to Tokyo, but I should have looked upon it with less dismay if my fellow passenger's name had been Smith or Brown. When I went on board, I found Mr. Gelada's luggage already below. I didn't like the look of it. There were far too many labels on the suitcases, and the wardrobe trunk was too big. He had unpacked his toilet things, and I observed that he was a patron of the Excelente Monsieur Coty, for I saw on the washing stand his scent, his hair wash, and his brilliant team. Mr. Gelada's brushes, ebony with his monogram in gold, would have been all the better for a scrub. I did not at all like Mr. Gelada. Having time on my hands, I decided to make my way to the smoking room. Being alone, I picked up a pack of cards and began to play patience.
If I'm not wrong, you would be Edward Morrison, huh?
Yes?
I am Mr. Gelada.
Oh, yes. We are sharing the cabin, I think.
Bit of luck, I call it. You never know who you're going to be put in with. I was jolly glad when I heard that you were English. I'm all for us English sticking together when we're abroad, if you understand what I mean.
Are you English?
Brother, you don't think that I look like an American, do you? British to the backbone, that's what I am.
King George has many strange subjects. Mr. Gelada's looks, his fluent speech, which had practically nothing English in it, and his exuberant gestures made me feel pretty sure that a closer inspection of that British passport would have betrayed the fact that Mr. Kilada was born under a bluer sky than is generally seen in England.
What will you have, pa?
Well, isn't there prohibition in force? To all appearance, the ship looks bone dry.
Whiskey and soda or a dry martini? You only have to say the word.
Martini for me, please. A very good cocktail.
Well, there are plenty more where that came from. And if you've got any friends on board, you tell them that you've got a pal who's got all the liquor in the world. When I was in America, I had such a large bar that all my friends used to come over and...
Mr. Kilada was chatty. He talked of New York and of San Francisco. He discussed pictures, plays, and politics. He was patriotic. The Union Jack is an impressive piece of drapery, but when it is nourished by a gentleman from Alexandria or Beirut, I cannot help feeling that it loses somewhat in dignity. Mr. Kilada was familiar. Now, I do not wish to put on airs, but I cannot help feeling that it is seemly in a total stranger to put Mr. before my name when he addresses me. Mr. Kilada, doubtless to set me at my ease, used no such formality. I did not like Mr. Kilada. Thinking that for this first occasion our conversation had lasted long enough, I decided to go on with my game.
The 3 on the floor. It's coming out, the tenor on the neighbor. Do you like card tricks?
No, I hate the card trick.
Well, I'll just show you this one.
He showed me 3. Well, if you don't mind, I think I'll just head down to the dining room and get my seat at the table.
Oh, it's quite all right. I have already taken a seat for you. I thought that as you were in the same cabin, we might just as well sit at the same table, waiting there for you.
I do not like Mr. Kilada. I not only shared a cabin with him and ate 3 meals a day at the same table, but I could not walk around the deck without his joining me. It was impossible to snub him. It never occurred to him that he was not wanted. He was certain that you were as glad to see him as he was to see you. In your own house, you might have kicked him downstairs or slammed the door in his face without the suspicion dawning on him that he was not a welcome visitor. I told you earlier that he was chatty, but that was an understatement. Because Mr. Kilada seemed to know lots of things about lots of things. He was voluble and vehement in his arguments and would not drop a subject, however unimportant. We called him
Mr. Know-all.
even to his face. He took it as a compliment. But life was difficult for me, especially with all the days and nights that I'm having to spend with him. I could not wait for the day that this ordeal would be over and we would disembark and go our separate ways. But while I was on board, there was only one thing on my mind. Mr. Kilada was a know-it-all, and I did not like Mr. Kilada. Mr. Kilada was a know-it-all, and I did not like Mr. Kilada. He was a good mixer, and in 3 days, knew everyone on board. He managed the suites, conducted auctions,
Lord!
collected money for the prizes at the sport. got out the quoit and golf matches, arranged the concert and the fancy dress ball. He was everywhere and all the time, the best-hailed man in the ship he was. Mr. Killard was a know-it-all, and I did not like Mr. Killard. Mr. Killard was a know-it-all, and I did not like Mr. Killard. And every night I heard him snore. He had promised wouldn't go him aboard. The only time I got to nar was my time every morning in the shower. He was everywhere and all the time, the most sane man on the ship he was. Mr. Killard was a know-it-all, and I did not like Mr. Killard. Mr. Killard was a know-it-all, and I did not like Mr. Killard. Mr. Killard was a know-it-all, and I did not like Mr. Killard. Good evening, Doctor. Aren't you early for dinner? May I have the pleasure of joining you?
The pleasure is mine, dear friend. I thought after suffering the unstoppable Mr. Killada for lunch, dinner and tea for 3 days, I'd grab a chance to slip in and slip out before he makes an entrance.
And a grand entrance it always is. Haughty, jovial, loquacious. And once he gets going, argumentative and intolerable.
Mr. Know-all. He seems to know everything better than anyone else. It seems an affront to his overweening vanity if you happen to disagree with him.
As our friend from Tokyo, Mr. Ramsey, often seems to do.
You mean the chap with that pretty little wife?
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you, Edward, I find her the more pleasant and better turned out of the two.
I agree, Doc. She dresses rather simply, but manages to achieve an effect of quiet distinction.
And her husband, quite the opposite, bulging out of those ill-fitting ready-made clothes and that annoying habit of pulling up his trousers every now and then.
The wife, I would say, possesses a quality that's nowadays not quite obvious in women. You cannot look at her without being struck by her modesty.
Oh yes, it shines in her like a flower on a coat.
Would you have any idea of her husband's occupation?
Mr. Ramsey, I think, is in the American Consular Service and is stationed in Tokyo. He's on his way back to resume his post after making a flying visit to New York to bring his wife. He's been spending a year at home.
When you're alone in New York?
Uh-huh. Ah, here they come.
Good evening, gentlemen. What a pleasure to see the table free of that ill-mannered, loud-mouthed Mr. Know-all.
I believe you and he have not been seeing eye to eye on many matters.
Look, I have immense respect for anyone knowledgeable. But a man seems to know everything about industry, trade, religion, politics, theology, mining, culture, music, and what have you. He has the goal to inform me of the policies of the American Consular Service on every matter, from the war in Russia to the timing of the next round of diplomatic postings.
He's the chap who knows.
I am sure he can give you the latest research on non-invasive techniques for the surgery of the hypothalamus.
And there he makes his grand entrance. So we all stand up.
Good evening to my dear friends here. How glad I am to see you all. Let me first compliment Lady Ramsay on the excellent dress she is wearing and the lovely string of pearls to go with it. Ah, Mr. Ramsay, you are indeed a lucky man. But here, I have a surprise for all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me have the pleasure of presenting to you the most famous singer on board this evening, the gorgeous Miss Sylvie.
Diamonds are forever. They are all I need to please me. They can't stimulate and tease me. They won't live in the night. I've no fear that they might desert me. Diamonds are forever.